All right, good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee voting session. We're going to start with some concurrences. We have House Bill 528. This is Baltimore County Vehicle Laws, Private Roadways in Residential Communities. Senate made something of a technical change, and so this just substitutes the Senate language for the House language. I would move to concur with the Senate. I would move to concur with the Senate amendments. Any discussion? All in favor of the concurrence, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone wish to record in opposition? It passes. We have HB 349. This is Prince George's County Speed Monitoring Systems, Maryland Route 210. The Senate made a change to the other graduated fines bill for automated enforcement from Delegate Stewart. This just matches the dollar amounts in that bill to this bill. So the Senate amendment moves the minimum fee for when you're going 12 to 15 miles per hour over the speed limit from $50 back to the current level of $40. So that's what the change does. I would move to concur with the Senate amendment. Second. Any discussion? All in favor of the concurrence, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, concurrence passes. Next up is House Bill 182. This is the aforementioned bill from Delegate Stewart. As I mentioned, they move the base penalty down from $50 to $40 when you're going between 12 and 15 miles per hour over the speed limit. They also established a work group to study best practices regarding speed monitoring systems in school zones. So I would move to concur with the Senate amendments. Any discussion? All in favor of the concurrence, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, passes. House Bill 1152. This is the Pet Policy Transparency Act from Delegate Stein. The major change is that the Senate removed the way we passed the bill, it would apply to landlords with 5 or more units. The Senate removed that, so it just applies to all units. So I would move to concur with the Senate amendments. Second. Any discussion? All right. All in favor of concurring with the Senate amendments, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Yep, sorry, Delegate Naraki? Opposed? Delegate Naraki is opposed. And Delegate Baker, thank you. All right, House Bill 25. This is a departmental bill on the reservoir augmentation permit establishment. This is the bill that I believe takes an existing Carroll County pilot and expands it to other jurisdictions that are interested in opting in. The Senate amendment just clarifies that Carroll County does not need to restart the process. They're sort of grandfathered in, but additional counties have to sort of follow this new process, but Carroll County doesn't sort of need to restart. So kind of a technical amendment to make sure we're not accidentally harming the county that started all this. So I'd move to concur with the Senate amendments. Second. Any discussion? Okay. Anyone opposed to the all in favor of the concurrence? Anyone opposed? Okay. And finally, House Bill 347. This is from Delegate Holmes, real property recordation and land records requirements. The Senate made just a technical change in the body of the bill so to conform the House bill with the Senate bill. And I would move to concur with the Senate amendments. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? 347. All right, so that passes, and I am looking forward to hopefully having some things to not concur over soon, because this is just way too much agreement for me. So we will turn now to our voting list number 14, and we will start with House Bill 892. Chair Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subcommittee recommendation is favorable with amendments. The bill as amended establishes that during the migratory Canada goose hunting season for the Atlantic population, the bag limit for Canada geese in the delineated eastern portion of the state must conform to the bag limit for the Atlantic population adopted annually by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Committee amendment limits the application of the bill to certain parts of the eastern portion of the state and establishes a 5-year sunset. Move the amendment. Second.
Amendments have been moved and seconded. Discussion of the amendments. All in favor of the amendments, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to the amendments?
Move the bills amended, sir.
Bills moved and seconded. Any discussion on the bill? All right. All in favor of House Bill 892 as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to record in opposition? Delegate Lehman. Bill passes. We'll move on to Senate Bill 335.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. subcommittee recommendation is favorable. This is the same bill as 892. We conformed 892 to 335. I would move the bill.
Bill's moved and seconded. Any discussion on Senate Bill 355? All in favor, signify by saying aye. The motion is recorded in opposition. Delegate Lehman, you wish to be opposed to the identical bill? Delegate Lehman. Delegate Lehman, do you want to be opposed to the identical cross file?
Yes.
Okay. Delegate Lehman is opposed to Senate Bill 335. Okay. Sorry. All right. We'll move on to Senate Bill 73. Chair
Thank
Boyce.
you, Mr. Chair. Subcommittee recommendation is favorable. As you know, this bill essentially renames the Chesapeake Conservation Corps Program to be the Thomas V. Mike Miller Jr. Chesapeake Conservation and Climate Corps Program. Move the bill.
Second.
Bill's moved and seconded. Any discussion on the bill? All in favor of SB 73, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any wish to record in opposition? Okay, bill passes. We'll move on to SB 1028. Chair Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Subcommittee recommendation is favorable with amendments. As amended, SB 1028 prohibits a person from operating a gasoline-powered vessel manufactured after July 31st, 2007 that has accommodation spaces, swim platforms, or lofting areas on the waters of the state unless the vessel has carbon monoxide warning labels affixed in conspicuous locations in the vicinity of both the transom, the rear, and the helm steering area of the vessel. Subcommittee amendment applies the bill to gasoline-powered vessels with accommodation spaces, swim lofts, and aft lofting areas. Move the amendment.
Amendments moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed to the amendment? Amendments pass.
Move the bill as amended, sir.
Bill's moved and seconded. Any discussion on SB 1028? All in favor of SB 1028 as amended, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to record in opposition? Okay, bill passes. We'll move on to HB 1556. Chair Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The subcommittee voted the bill favorable with amendments. However, substitute amendments have been handed out. As amended, this bill prohibits MDE from implementing the Advanced Clean Trucks program until a certain needs assessment and deployment plan is published, subject to certain conditions. The bill authorizes MDE to apply specified enforcement or penalty provisions to a motor vehicle manufacturer for the failure to meet any requirements under the California Advanced Clean Cars 2 program for model year 2027 or model year 2028 only under certain circumstances. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters provisions under the Advanced Clean Trucks program and Advanced Clean Cars 2 program as previously described. Move the amendments.
Amendments moved and seconded. Any discussion on the amendments? Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question on the amendment. So, and I apologize, I don't seem to have gotten the reprint, but I just want to clarify with these amendments, that's the 40% that they will have to, 40% have to, okay, thank you.
Delegate Ruth, yes, just to amplify, yes, for the Clean Cars 2 program, the no penalty provisions do not apply if manufacturers representing 40% of the cars and vehicles subject to Advanced Clean Cars 2 in the state have agreed to them.
Any further discussion on the amendments? Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Delegate Stein, could you just explain to me what that means in practice? Like, what does that 40% mean in practice? Who could you give some examples of who that is, those kind of companies, what that might be?
Sure. The top 3 manufacturers, the manufacturers with leading market share in Maryland, let's see, General Motors, okay, Toyota, and I always forget what the third one is. Honda, did someone say? Okay, Honda. So if those 3 manufacturers were to agree with CARB, the California Air Resources Board, or the federal government to an alternative arrangement for implementation of advanced clean cars, that would represent 40% of the market share in Maryland and would apply to all manufacturers selling into the state.
Okay, thank you.
So just to provide a little bit of data, since I happen to have it, Toyota is 18.6%, Honda is 11.6%, GM is 12.5%, Ford is 10.2%, Stellantis is 6.2%, Tesla is 4.6% and dropping. Further questions? Sorry, Delegate Naraki?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Delegate Foley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Vice Chair, I didn't hear, did you also offer an amendment on uncodified language?
Yes, it is in the reprint, but I'm happy to read it.
Yeah, well, I didn't see the
Delegate Foley.
reprint.
Oh, okay.
Did we have the reprint distributed? I don't think I saw it.
Okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to come back to this bill. We're going to give staff a chance to print out the reprint and
Okay,
distribute it
thank
to
you.
everybody.
Thank
We've got
you.
plenty of other bills to do.
Thank you.
So we're going to take a, yeah, can we just send hard copies out? Okay, so we will come back to House Bill 1556, and we will turn to SB 253. Chair Stein.
Recommendation of the subcommittee is favorable with amendments. As amended, this departmental bill exempts the incineration of chemical warfare materials at a Department of Defense designated research facility from certain special permitting requirements if the incineration is done for research development or demonstration purposes. The bill establishes various requirements for such purposes under a research development and demonstration permit. The amendments define a term of art and prohibit the Department of the Environment from issuing an RD&D permit under the bill unless an emergency preparedness plan has been developed with adequate public participation and has been presented at public hearings, public meetings in certain jurisdictions. Move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
All right, amendments moved. Second discussion, the amendments. All in favor of the amendments, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And opposed to the amendments, amendments pass.
Move the bill as amended.
Bills moved and second. Discussion on the bill. Delegate Guyton.
Mr. Chair, I just want to check with Subcommittee Chair Stein. Is this going to give Aberdeen or everything they need that they've asked us for in order to do this research? I mean, are there any restrictions in this bill now as amended that's going to prohibit that?
Bottom line, Delegate, is my understanding is the facility is fine with these amendments. The amendments as they came in they were added to the Senate version of the bill as it came over that have much stricter MDE oversight and permitting provisions, and then the Delegate Healy provide an amendment, which was agreed to, which provides for the emergency preparedness plan and public meeting part.
All right, thank you.
Delegate Lehman.
Yeah, can you clarify on Delegate Healy's amendment? Because it didn't seem to me at the end of the day, and I do appreciate, Delegate Healy, all the efforts you made on this front. It wasn't easy. But it sounded like it ended up being the plan that they claim has already has been in place for years, or is it any different in any way? Because I understand they sort of misconstrued what Delegate Healy was after originally and thought she wanted plans for like every time they ran a test. How did it end up? Did it end up being different than what they already have in place? Can someone clarify that?
If I may, Mr. Chair, I worked extensively for about a week on these amendments with the stakeholders, and really, it's learning how things are interpreted by the military, how they read, and how Maryland law is written, the different language that we use, and all of these things. Basically, we came to a meeting of the minds, and it was more about trying to make sure that we understood each other clearly. And I think the final amendment that all the stakeholders agreed to, all of them agreed, including myself, it was very clear that they wanted to make sure that they weren't being given automatic burden to provide equipment like fire trucks and stuff like that. So we made sure that the language was very clear that what they had to develop was a plan in case of a worst case scenario. They didn't want that language used throughout the bill, so they gave me a term of art that comes from a legitimate source describing what this event is. And they used that language. We just put an amendment that gave a definition of what we're talking about, and then used the term instead of using worst-case scenario, which was not precise enough. This was much more precise language, and it is actually from, another source, a source that was recognized in the profession. So I'm very happy with the amendment as it came out finally. It was a lot of work, but I think that it will provide a level of safety. I don't know that, and I certainly hope it will never be needed. But the idea is that they have a plan in place, it's explicit, the public will have confidence that there is a plan, if needed, that can be executed.
So just one more clarification, Mr. Chair. So this was a clarification of what would be an emergency under this new scenario of this, pilot program that is different than what they've done in the past? Or what constitutes an emergency? What was the clarification?
No, it doesn't change what constitutes an emergency. It makes it explicit, because they were working under these operationally, they were working under these definitions, but nobody knew what they were. And if you were going to develop a plan, we want the plan to be transparent, so they're going to have public meetings to explain and get some input about how these things would be done and when they would be used. We can't be too prescriptive because this is an ongoing thing, but we also didn't want to, again, say that the language would be so vague that it wouldn't mean anything. At the same time, we didn't want it to be so precise that it would become obsolete almost immediately. So I think we found the sweet spot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Tarassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this goes to Delegate Healy's amendment as well. Does the amendment, and it sounds like it's just clarifying of what is existing now, it's not adding additional protections, is that? That's correct. Okay. And does that include, you said something about public meetings or public notice, and it sounded like that notice, maybe I misunderstood, but that notice is about what the plan is. It's not necessarily notice of there being some kind of leakage or some kind of like if there.
That will be something they put in the plan, I would think, but I mean.
So, okay, sorry. So there's nothing in the bill that requires them to give public notice in an emergency?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question.
I think.
It falls under controlled hazardous substances, which has its own procedures and processes.
It sounds like what council is advising, Delegate, is that there's an existing process for that because these are hazardous materials. So this bill doesn't need to mandate that because that's existing in law already.
Okay, so if there's some kind of leakage, then is the public informed?
There's already currently a process.
That's right.
I know exactly what that process is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Delegate Otto?
Mr. Chair, do we need to move the amendments?
Amendments moving seconded. We're just having some discussion on the
Yeah.
amendments before we take a vote, so.
Well, I'm good to move the amendments.
They've been moving seconded. We're just having discussion, so I appreciate it, Delegate Otto. Delegate, let me, do you have another question? I see your mic is on, but that might just be a residual. Your mic is on. You're good? Okay, you can turn your mic off. Okay, any further discussion on the amendments? Delegate Otto's had enough. So all in favor of the amendments, signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed to the amendments? Okay, amendments pass.
Move the bill as amended. Second.
Bill's moving second. Any further discussion on the bill? Okay, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. And in which we record in opposition? Delegate Tarassa? Delegate Lehman? Okay, bill passes. We will turn to SB 901, Chair Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recommendation is favorable with amendments. As amended, the bill establishes an extended producer responsibility program for packaging and paper products collectively defined as covered materials. The amendments alter and clarify definitions and provide for the construction of Subtitle 25. Specifically, the amendments exclude beverage containers covered under a bottle deposit program from the bill's definition of a beverage container, exempt certain packaging used for the long-term protection or storage of durable goods, clarify the exemption for packaging for products subject to the paint stewardship program, alter the definition of paper products to apply to products that are sold or supplied to the consumer for personal and non-commercial use, and provide that Subtitle 25 may not be construed to preclude the adoption of a bottle deposit program in the state. The amendments also specify that the annual registration fee must cover, as necessary, the cost of developing and implementing program regulations, rather than just covering costs in 2026 only. Finally, the amendments clarify that a plan's methodology for reimbursement rates for covered services for covered materials is exclusive of exempt producers. There was one additional amendment submitted to the committee after the subcommittee took up the bill. The amendment clarifies the exemption for packaging for oral nutritional supplements to also include packaging for tube feeding formulas. Move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
Amendments moved. Second discussion, the amendments. Delegate Morgan.
Thanks. I want to make sure that, Delegate Stein, are the paper people and the bottle people now happier with this bill?
I believe so, yes.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pro Tem, does this still include all packaging types to include paper?
There are, let's see, in terms of paper, there are some limitations on what's a covered product as paper.
Chair Stein, actually, what I'd like to do, if possible, is in your amendment description, you had mentioned that it alters the definition of paper products to apply to products that are sold or supplied to the consumer for personal, non-commercial use. And I'd like to pull that out of your amendment.
Okay.
And that's actually based on discussions with the sponsor and other stakeholders. So I propose to remove that from your amendment.
Okay. That is fine. I'll move the amendments as modified.
Okay, amendments moved. Second. Vice Chair Boyce, does that address your question? Great. Delegate Jacobs?
Thank you. I'm a little confused with these amendments, as I'm not on the Environment Subcommittee, but I just want to understand this legislation doesn't apply to restaurants, correct? They're still exempt?
Yes, they are exempt.
And was the dietary supplement and exemption, did you just mention that it's been reinstated, that the exemption's still there?
So current law just refers to broadly dietary supplements, and what's referred to the exemption in the bill relates specific to oral nutritional substances for certain purposes, and then that was clarified to also include packaging or exclude packaging for a certain tube formula.
How about vitamins?
That's
Yeah, why don't you sit in Ben's spot?
Chair. So the exemptions have been updated from what was in current law. The current law had a more broad exclusion for dietary supplements. Here there is exclusions for the oral nutritional supplements, certain medical products, but it is different than what is provided under current law.
So there's vitamin supplement, is that in or out?
I think that is still included as packaging, a covered product.
Because it was. There was an exemption.
Are you referring to what was in current law? That's
Yes.
been changed.
So now it has not been reinstated on the vitamin supplement.
Correct.
Okay. And how about, I know American Forestry had an amendment. I understand that. Is that still in there or not?
No, we don't have that.
That was taken out?
That's what the chairman just
I can't remember when it came.
There were, if I could, Mr. Chair, there were two amendments offered by American Forestry. One was, I believe, to limit the coverage to printed paper materials. That was not added. And then the amendment that the chair was referring to that was adopted, but that is being proposed to take out, altering the definition of paper products to apply to products that are sold or supplied to the consumer for personal, non-commercial use. That amendment is coming out as well.
All right. Thank you.
Any other questions for council? Any other questions on the amendments? I believe,
What are we voting on?
so right now, the amendments were moved. There was a second, and then there was discussion.
They took that.
And
Without the paper, yes.
yes, we took that out. That was a part of the amendments. So all in favor of the amendments, say aye. Aye. Anyone object to the amendments? Mr. Chair, is there a second? Second. Any discussion on the bill as amended? All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye. Aye. Any opposition?
No.
Jacobs, Otto, No Rocky, and Baker. Bill passes. SB 265, Mr. Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This cross-file departmental bill did not go before the subcommittee. There is one difference between the Senate bill, which is before us, and the House bill. The Senate bill adds language exempting a project previously approved under the indirect potable reuse pilot program from having to complete a feasibility study when applying for coverage under a reservoir augmentation permit. This was required by Westminster and endorsed by MDE. Since Westminster already had to do a feasibility study when applying for the indirect potable reuse permit, the Senate conformed the House bill to the Senate bill. I move favorable. There were no amendments.
There's seconds. Any discussion on the bill? Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm getting a little confused, so maybe I was born that way. Didn't we just vote on a?
Yes, we did.
Okay, and this is the same? This is the same bill?
Exactly the same, madam.
Okay, all right, thank you.
No problem. Delegate, okay, Naraki's.
Thank you.
Move the bill, Madam Chair.
All in favor of the bill, favorable bill, say aye. Aye. Any objections? No Rocky. Baker. Bill passes. SB 149, Chair Stubb.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is almost identical to the House cross-file. ECM is primary and voted favorable. The effective dates differ along with a few technical differences. ECM prefers the Senate version, so I move the bill. No amendments, correct? Yes.
Second, there's a first and a second. Is there any discussion on the favorable bill? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Jacobs, Noraki, Morgan, Baker, and Otto. Siliberti, you're good. Okay, I'll take that as a good. All righty, SB 896, Mr. Holmes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. HB 896 received a favorable with amendment from the subcommittee. As amended, the bill requires a landlord to provide a written copy or summary of a pet policy as specified. The committee amendments clarifies only if a landlord has a website for a property, is the landlord required to provide a link to the property's pet policy. Move the amendments, Madam Chair.
There's a second. Second. Amendments moved in seconds. Any discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposition to the amendments?
Move the bill as amended, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? Second. Bill's been moved in seconds. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended? All in favor of the bill as amended, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right, we've got Otto, No Rocky, Baker. Bill passes. SB 327.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 327 received a favorable recommendation from the subcommittee. The bill authorized county to enter into a pay in lieu of taxes agreement with owners of rental property who's agreed to maintain a portion of the dwelling units as affordable for at least 15 years. The Senate bill confirms the House version as passed by the House. Move HB 327 with no amendments, Mr. Chair.
He came back with.
Any discussion on Senate Bill 327? right, all in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any wish to record in opposition? Delegate Jacobs, Delegate Otto, Delegate Silverde, Delegate Naraki, Delegate Morgan, and Delegate Baker. Bill passes. We move on to SB 175, Chair Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 175, we've heard this bill for quite a while. CSST, corrugated stainless steel tubing. The bill received a favorable with amendments from the committee. As amended, the bill prohibits and imposes penalties for distribution and use of non-arc resistant jacketed corrugated stainless steel tubing. The bill also requires the Department of Labor and the Office of State Fire Marshal to conduct a related study. Move the amendments, Mr. Chair.
Amendments moved and seconded. Discussion on the amendments. All in favor of the amendments, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed to the amendments? Amendments pass.
Move the bill as amended, Mr. Chair.
Amendments bill and seconded. Any discussion on the bill? All in favor of SB 175 as amended, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any wish to record in opposition? Okay, bill passes. We move on to SB 120, Chair Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 120 received a favorable with no amendments from the committee. As the bill states, the bill alters statutory provisions that prohibit unreasonable restrictions on land use related to the installation of solar collector systems under specified circumstances. The bill specified the restriction on use is unreasonable if application is restriction of a particular proposal. Number one, increases the installation cost of at least 5% over the projected cost in initially proposed installation, or two, raises the energy generated by a solar collector system by at least 10% below the projected cost. We have heard this bill before, ladies and gentlemen. The Senate bill conforms to the House bill that we already passed. Move SB 120 with no amendments, Mr. Chair.
SB 120 has been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the bill? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any wish to record in opposition? Delegate Jacobs, Delegate Otto, Delegate Silverde, Delegate Naraki, Delegate Morgan, and Delegate Baker. Bill passes. We move on to Senate Bill 572. Chair Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 572 was recommended favorable by the subcommittee. There are no amendments. Move the bill.
Those moving second. Any discussion on the bill? All in favor of SB 572, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to record in opposition? Okay, bill passes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Couple no's.
Sorry, you guys are opposed to this local bill. Okay, Delegate Naraki. Delegate Baker. Okay. Sorry, I jumped too fast, guys. We will move on to SB 820, Chair Healy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 820 is a local bill. It increases from $1,000 to $5,000 the maximum fine that may be imposed by a municipality for the enforcement of a misdemeanor or municipal infraction as specified. This is the first increase in roughly 30 years. So the motion is favorable coming from the subcommittee.
Bills moved and seconded. Just as a reminder, we did this for counties last year, Chair Healy, and now we're just matching municipalities to what we did for counties.
That's correct.
Okay. Any discussion? Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just looking at the bill, so it's not my subcommittee, but just looking at, was there any discussion, Chair Healy, of like a tiered structure instead of going right from 1,000 to 5,000? I'm just concerned about the impact that could have with, say, certain housing units. Like, you could almost get a one strike and you're out policy if someone gets a $5,000 fine.
This is enabling legislation, so the amounts would be set at the local level. It's up to $5,000 from up to $1,000. So that could be worked at the local level, at the municipal level. This is only municipalities. I know there are no municipalities in your county, so
true.
It probably doesn't apply anywhere in your county at this point, except that we already have the law for the counties.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All right, all in favor of SB 820 signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Delegate Jacobs, Delegate Otto, Delegate Silverde, Delegate Naraki, Delegate Morgan, and Delegate Baker. We will move on to SB 718, Chair Healy.
Senate Bill 718 is a local Somerset County Code of Public Laws, edition legalization. The bill legalizes the 2025 edition of the Somerset County Code. And the motion is, it was not in the subcommittee. It's a duplicate of the House bill. Move favorable.
Bill's moving second. Any discussion on SB 718? All in favor of this bill, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Okay, bill passes. We move on to SB 102. Chair Gilley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The Senate Bill 102 is also favorable. It was not before the committee. It is identical to the House bill, I believe. The bill explicitly authorizes Resilience Authority to pool together with other entities, including other resiliency authorities, to purchase casualty insurance and so forth. The motion is favorable.
Bill's moving second. Any discussion on the bill? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Okay, bill passes. We will move on to SB 883. Chair Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 883 received a favorable with amendment recommendation from the subcommittee. As amended, the bill establishes the towing procedure work group staffed by the Maryland Attorney General to analyze predatory towing practices within the towing industry in the state and also consider whether it is necessary, appropriate, and in the public interest to establish post-towing procedures related to the towing or removal of motor vehicles from privately owned parking lots. The subcommittee amendments alter the membership and staffing for the work group and alter the mandate for the work group. Move the amendments.
Next, moving second. Discussion of the amendments. All in favor of the amendments, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed to the amendments? Amendments pass.
Move the bill.
Bill's moving second. Any discussion on the bill? Delegate Lehman.
Yeah, quick question. Chair Stewart, does this specifically, will this work group specifically look at possessory liens? Is that language actually in this bill?
Possessory liens are
amendment?
still mentioned as one of the things in the purview of the work group, but the work group's mission, their mandate has been altered slightly by the subcommittee. They're now going to look at predatory practices within the towing industry, and they're also going to look at whether or not establishing a possessory lien is in the public interest.
Okay, so that term possessory lien is actually in there, not
is.
just predatory practices.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? All in favor of SB 883, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Okay, bill passes. We will move on to SB 54. Chair Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 54 with the cross-file from our great chairman. I think this bill is about military vehicles. No, wait, sorry. SB 54 reinstates and makes permanent a temporary requirement for the MVA to make available specially designed vintage reproduction registration plates. Straight favorable. Move the bill.
Second. Bill's moving second. Any discussion on the bill? All in favor of SB 54, signify by saying aye. Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Okay, bill passes. Move on to SB 281. Chair Stewart.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. That bill, which is in the same posture as HB 475, makes certain changes within the transportation article applicable to all members of the uniformed services, thereby expanding eligibility for certain benefits. Move the bill.
Bill's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor of SB 281, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Okay, bill passes. Moving on to SB 381, Chair Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. SB 381 is another one cross-filed by our chairman. I think this is the military vehicle one, Senator Love. No, wait, no, sorry. This is actually about prohibiting an agency that implements and operates an automated enforcement program from accessing or using a recorded image or associated data without a warrant, subpoena, or court order unless the access or use is for an appropriate traffic enforcement purpose. Move favorable.
Bill's moving second. Any discussion on the bill?
Actually, yeah, there is an amendment. Sorry, yeah, Patrick saved us. There is actually an amendment. Move the amendments.
Second. Amendments moving second. Any discussion on the amendments to conform it to the House version?
It's just a conforming amendment that clarifies that an employee or a contractor of an agency can use the recorded image or data to administer or process citations. It's the same thing we did on the House version.
Any further discussion? All in favor of SB 381, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Delegate Siliberti. Sponsor problem? I got you. All right, bill passes. Move on to Senate Bill 915. Chair Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senate Bill 915 authorizes a police officer in Baltimore County to enforce the Maryland vehicle law on a private roadway in Queen Anne Village in Owings Mills. Move the bill.
Minutes moving second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone wish to record in opposition? Okay, bill passes. We will turn back to House Bill 1556. Everyone should now have a reprint. I know you've had lots of time to review it while we were going through those bills. Is there further discussion? I think the last thing was about the uncodified language. Hope you can see. Delegate Foley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I did find that language in the reprint, as the Speaker Pro Tem said. But my question is, and I'm not looking at the, so as I understand, am I right that this preamble was also added to the bill? Was that always in there, or was that added to the bill?
That was added.
Okay, great, thank you.
Further questions on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments, signify by saying aye. Aye. And opposed to the amendments? Okay, the amendments pass.
Move the bill as amended.
Second.
Amendments moved and second. Discussion on the bill. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to explain my vote, basically. And I'm going to be voting green on this bill, even though I do not like it, and I don't like that we have to do this. Climate change is real, and we're seeing the effects now, and we need to start cleaning up our transportation. But we can't get blood from a stone, and the manufacturers are telling us that if they have to meet these targets, that they will reduce the amount of gasoline-powered vehicles coming into the state, which could cause shortages and it could cause increased prices. I don't know if they really would do that, but if they do, it comes at a time when we have a perfect storm coming from the federal government as well, where we have tariffs, which are going to be adding to the cost of cars, possibly as much as $10,000 per vehicle in one article I saw. There are two reasons that people say they don't want to buy EVs, that they're interested in EVs, but the two reasons that people are hesitant is the lack of charging infrastructure and the prices. The federal government, I believe the funds for the charging infrastructure under the NEVI program are still frozen. And so while we are continuing to try to build out the infrastructure, we're limited by budget and other things, and people drive out of state as well. I mentioned the tariffs, and I also don't know what's going to happen with the vehicle tax credit. I'm not sure if that's still active or not. It was a $7,500 per vehicle credit for EVs that are manufactured in the United States. So all of that is going to make price and infrastructure very difficult for achieving these goals. But I also want to put it on the legislative record that we do still expect manufacturers to meet those targets. And the uncodified language that was mentioned earlier was my request. It says, this act may not be construed to have any effect on the annual percentage sales targets established under the Clean Cars 2 program or the Advanced Clean Trucks program. And so I want the manufacturers to understand you're still responsible for meeting those targets, which is 2029 model year, 59%. I've heard it said we can't make people want to buy cars, and that's not completely true. There are, for any business, there are many things that businesses can and do to influence consumer behavior, from the products they put out to the prices that they charge, to the marketing that they use. So I hope that the manufacturers will look at all of these things in encouraging an increased amount, and the dealers who are partners with the manufacturers, increased amount of electric vehicle percentages so that we can meet these targets in 2029. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Do I understand with the amendments and all on this bill, it's delaying the consequence to the manufacturers for these?
For Clean Cars, for the Clean Cars 2 program, if there is an agreement between California or the federal government and manufacturers representing at least 40% of the market, if that does not happen, then there cannot be penalties assessed for failure to meet targets in model years 27 and 28. Now, with respect to trucks, we're saying that since MDE was to publish a needs assessment under the Advanced Clean Truck law by the end of last year. And it hasn't been done yet. And since the original law that we passed said that the department may delay implementation of the clean truck regulations based on its assessment of the assessment in consultation with agencies, we're saying that the regulations under the mandating sale of clean trucks cannot take effect until a few years after that assessment is published. So I give you a short and a long answer.
That's my question. Thank you.
Okay.
That was my question. You answered it quite well. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to echo the comments of my colleague, Delegate Ruth. I don't think any of us are happy about where we are in terms of our ability to progress on this issue, but we are where we are. I really appreciate the uncodified language, and I'm just going to put in a plug here, but I think the issue of infrastructure and the money that we have for infrastructure is a real one. But what we should be doing in the meantime is making sure that we have those in every home that's built in Maryland. And so I just wanted to make sure I put that on the record, because I think there are things that we can do that in the interim.
Thank you. Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I share the sentiments of Delegate Ruth and Delegate Terrassa and my concerns. I'm as idealistic, I think, as the next person here, but sometimes we need to be pragmatic, and I know this was a tough call on Delegate Stein's part. I appreciate his efforts over the last few weeks and hearing all sides. And also I share Delegate Terrassa's critique, because I've worked with her over the years on EV infrastructure, and it is woefully lacking in Maryland, both, publicly speaking, publicly available, and where people live, which is one of the most important things. We have a long way to go. I get that it's a chicken or an egg kind of thing, but we need to do better on the infrastructure part. And thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Foley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to explain my vote as well, and I want to associate myself with the comments of my colleagues, Delegates Ruth, Terrassa, and Lehman, and just very briefly add that I think it is really important that we keep moving forward and that we stick to these goals. I think it's going to be harder than ever given the atmosphere that we're in, so I think it's really important. I think from that standpoint, it's important that we pass this bill and we continue to partner with the car dealers here in Maryland so that we can reach those goals. And I, too, want to thank the Speaker Pro Tem for his work on this bill. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Delegate Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank Chairman Stein as well for all the work, and his whole committee for all the work that they've done on this particular bill. One thing that very early in the session, we had a briefing on the infrastructure issues, and we really need to address those. I think that I'm going to vote for this bill, and I think that nobody's really happy about it, but at the same time, we are where we are. That is absolutely true, and we have to be practical because you can, let the perfect be the enemy of the good, and we can't really afford to do that. Thank you.
Second bite at the apple for Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the second bite at the apple. I did forget that I was going to also thank the Speaker Pro Tem for all his work on this, and I think no one here has done more for the environment than the Speaker Pro Tem, and I know he takes this very seriously, and I also want to thank him for the time he spent, literally hours, talking just to subcommittee members. I don't know how many other hours he spent talking to other stakeholders. Thank you.
Further discussion? Okay, all in favor of House Bill 1556, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone wish to be recorded in opposition? Bill passes unanimously. Let me add my thanks to the Speaker Pro Tem for spending hours and hours talking to me about the bill. It's very helpful, and doing all the other work that was described by my colleagues. We will be voting again tomorrow in all likelihood, so just keep an ear out on the floor and keep an eye on your inboxes, and see you all over there. Thank you.